The wind came down off the Medicine Bow Range like it had something to prove, full of ice and old pine resin. It scoured the high Wyoming basin where cattle drifted like smoke and fences gave out before the earth did. February was a hard month, brutal, whispering. But it was in that bleak stretch of days that the Horsebreaker rode into Elk Valley and dismounted at the McKinley Ranch with little more than a bedroll and his own silence. They called him Ellis Ward, said he came from Dakota Territory, or maybe farther, where the rivers froze early and never quite thawed right. He spoke little, watched much, and when he worked with the horses it was as if he'd been born in the pasture beside them. No spurs, no whip, only a patience that seemed older than he was. Folks said he had a way of listening to the wild in them, and the wild listened back. Cora McKinley watched him from the porch when she could get away with it. She was 23, with a quiet resolve worn into her bones by years of drought and loss, and more recent, the arrangement her father had made. A union of convenience, hers and the son of a cattle baron, Jasper Crane. It was the kind of promise brokered by men over scotch and maps, sealed with a handshake that took no account of the heart. Cora had not been asked, only told. She wore her mother's wedding ring on a chain around her neck, though the gold was dulled now and the inscription worn near smooth. Her mother had once said, "The land don't give, it trades. Love, same way. You offer it and you wait." Cora had waited. But what came for her was not love, it was security in the form of a name and a fortune, and the expectation that she'd smile through it. The first time Ellis spoke to her, it was barely a word. She was out near the upper corral, a book forgotten in her lap, watching the way he coaxed a roan Mustang to walk toward him, no rope, just a soft whistle. "You read much?" he asked, pausing just long enough that she startled. She looked up, the air catching in her throat. "Sometimes," she said. He nodded. "That one there," he gestured to her book. "It's the one where the sea kills the sailor, but not his soul." She blinked. "Melville." "What?" And that was all. He went back to the horse, and she sat very still, the snow beginning to fall around her like sifted flour. Over the weeks that followed, their paths crossed more often. Not by chance, Cora began to walk the line of the fences more regularly or bring feed to the tack shed where he worked late. They spoke little. But sometimes he'd nod toward the sky and say, "Storm, thinking about it," or she'd remark, "That sorrel's getting his wind back," and he'd offer a quiet, "He's coming right if slow." In a world where so many men spoke to fill silence, Ellis wore his like a second skin. And Cora found herself drawn to that silence. It didn't crowd her, it let her breathe. The day she saw him gentling the wild filly with her eyes shut and hooves flailing, something shifted. He took the blows, not cruelly but steady, and kept murmuring, "Easy, ain't no one's gonna hurt you now," over and over, until she lowered her head and pressed her muzzle to his chest like a child seeking comfort. Later that evening, her father mentioned Jasper Crane's arrival was set for next week. "Time you started thinking about your colors," he said. "He's bringing his mother, wants to see you in white." Cora sat at the supper table, hands folded tight. "I don't wear white," she said softly. Her father scowled. "Don't be difficult, girl. You're not marrying a color." She looked past him, toward the window, where the last light of day haloed the barn in gold. She said nothing, but her chest ached like something vital had come loose. She went walking that night, coat unfastened, her boots crunching through the rime. She found Ellis in the lower field, leaning against the fence, watching the stars claw their way through the dusk. "You break horses because you like it?" she asked, surprising them both. He turned his head, studied her a long moment. "Because I understand them." She nodded, looking away. "They scare me sometimes, the wild in them, the eyes, like they see something I don't." "They do," he said, "but that don't mean it ain't meant for you." When she looked back at him, his face was unreadable. But there was something in the way he watched her then, like she was a trail he hadn't dared ride yet, but might. She didn't sleep much that night. 3 days later, Jasper Crane arrived with his mother and a wagon full of expensive linens. The house buzzed with forced laughter and brittle conversation. He was clean-shaven, sharp-suited, all bluster and ambition. And when he looked at Cora, it was with ownership, not wonder. That night, as she stood outside watching the storm roll in over the mountains, she whispered Ellis's name just once, to the cold, just to see how it felt on her tongue. She did not know that from the barn he'd heard it, and it undid something in him. He hadn't spoken her name before. But soon he would. The storm came fast, pressing the night close to the ground, the sky crackling with a fury that felt personal. Wind howled through the cottonwoods, tore at the eaves of the bunkhouse, and rattled the loose panes in the parlor where Jasper Crane poured himself brandy and talked of railroads. Cora stood in the shadows of that room, her posture a straight line of polite defiance. "I could take you to Cheyenne in spring," Jasper said, swirling the amber in his glass. "There's dresses there you lose your breath over, and theaters. I want to show you the world, Cora, not just this cold dirt patch your father calls home." She smiled then, barely. "This cold dirt patch is where my mother's buried. That means something to me." Jasper's smile thinned. "I'm not saying leave it. I'm saying improve it. A woman of your standing shouldn't have to dig troughs or mend shirts." "I was raised in the troughs," she said, and left him there, still speaking. Outside, the storm was a living thing. Cora slipped from the porch in her work coat, not the fine wool one she'd been given, and walked through the dark like she knew every inch of it, which she did. She found Ellis in the barn, sitting beside a lamplight and rubbing liniment into the shoulder of the roan mustang. He looked up, not surprised. "Didn't think you'd come out in this." She leaned against the doorframe. "Didn't think you'd still be working." A pause, then the rustle of hay as the horse shifted, and Ellis set the bottle aside. "Storm makes some of them edgy. Better I stay close." Cora stepped inside, the lamplight catching the edge of her cheekbone, the loose strands of her hair. She reached out slowly, touched the Mustang's neck. "You named her." "No," he said. "A name's a promise. She ain't asked for one yet." Cora's hand stilled. "What if someone gave you a name you didn't choose?" He looked up then, the silence stretching taut between them. "Then you don't answer to it." The thunder cracked loud and sudden. The Mustang flinched, pressing against Ellis. Cora backed a step, and he stood close now, closer than they'd ever allowed. "You cold?" he asked. She shook her head, but her voice was low when she said, "I don't know what I am." He didn't speak, didn't touch her, only watched. That was his way. No claim, no push, just that steady presence that waited. "I feel like I'm being traded," she whispered. "Like I'm a sack of winter wheat, and my price was agreed upon before I ever had weight in my own bones." Ellis nodded slow. "Ain't right." She looked up at him, the lamplight flickering in her eyes. "So what is?" His mouth moved then, but no words came for a moment. And when they did, they were quieter than thunder but heavier than it. "You with a choice." She breathed in sharp as if it cut. And then the moment broke, footsteps on the snow outside, voices raised. Her father's, Jasper, searching. Ellis stepped back into his stillness, and Cora turned toward the door. But before she slipped into the night, he said her name. "Cora." She turned, throat tight. "You ever need to go," he said, "you come to me first." And just like that, he'd thrown a stone into still water. A promise, maybe, or just the start of one. She didn't answer, just nodded and vanished into the storm. That night she didn't sleep, nor did Ellis. Days passed. The wedding was set for mid-March. With the thaw, Jasper began overseeing parts of the ranch, like a man taking stock of his inheritance. He suggested tearing down the old chapel her mother had built, too old-fashioned. "We'll have something grander brought in." Cora bit her tongue so hard she tasted blood. She avoided Jasper's hand when she could. When she couldn't, she let it lay on hers like a paperweight, nothing more. In the evenings she walked, not always to the barn, sometimes to the ridgeline where the wind felt like wings, sometimes to the creek where the ice was breaking up and the current ran wild beneath. She carried a flask of rye now, her mother's locket, and always she carried the sound of her name in Ellis's voice, not a question, not a command, just a tether. He watched her from a distance, always seemed to be wherever she needed him, just out of reach. She once found a fresh coiled rope left outside the tack shed after she'd mentioned hers had frayed. Another time her horse was saddled before dawn, warm and waiting. He never said it was him. She never asked. One morning Jasper caught her coming back from the ridge, hair loose, cheeks flushed with wind. He stepped in close, hand on her waist. "Where do you go?" he asked, too sweet. "Somewhere quiet." "You should let me come with." She smiled, cool. That would defeat the point. He didn't like that. His fingers dug in a fraction harder. "You'll have to learn to share more of yourself, Cora. A wife belongs to her husband." She pulled away. Then you'll need a different kind of wife." He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. That night, Ellis left a note inside her copy of Moby Dick, folded twice. It said only, "You still have time." Cora read it 3 times before sliding it against her chest, under the locket. She didn't know what she'd do yet. But the knowing was coming, and it smelled like horses and wind and the first melt of spring. The thaw came in fits and starts, with the snow receding like a slow confession. Mud swallowed the trails, and calves dropped early, trembling in the pale sun. Cora rose before dawn most days, not for the wedding dress fittings or the tasteless silverware her father insisted on, but to ride. The only place she still felt her own weight was in a saddle. She stopped wearing the engagement ring, said it slipped too much. Her father didn't press. Jasper noticed, though. He always noticed when something didn't bend the way he wanted it to. Ellis kept to his work, but something about him had changed, an alertness under the skin, like he was waiting for a storm that wouldn't break. He never brought up the note, never stepped closer than she allowed. But when she passed him in the yard or near the south pasture, she could feel his gaze like the sun through leaves, warm, patient, never burning. And still, she hesitated. One morning, a cowhand rode in hard from the West Range. Trouble at the river bend, a steer down, maybe wolves. Jasper volunteered at once, eager to prove himself in front of the crew. Cora offered to go too, not out of duty, but to be away from the parlor and the chatter of floral arrangements. Ellis came without asking. The ride was long and wet, the river running high and angry. The steer was gone, half pulled into the trees, but the prints left behind weren't wolves. Cat, maybe, mountain lion, the kind that watched you before you even knew to be afraid. Jasper insisted on tracking it. "Can't have it coming back," he said, unslinging his rifle like it was theater. "It's not hunting anymore," Ellis said. "It's fed, leave it be." Jasper smirked. "You'd know that, would you?" Ellis didn't rise, just mounted up again. A man should know when to walk away from something meaner than him. Cora saw the flicker in Jasper's eyes then, a flash of something brittle, but he said nothing more. On the ride back, her horse stumbled in a wash and she slid hard. Jasper was nearest but didn't dismount. "You all right?" he called from atop his gelding. Ellis was already there, hand out, helping her up before she could answer. His grip was firm, steady, and when she looked at him, mud streaked her cheek and her heart stuttered. "I'm fine," she murmured, but didn't let go right away. Jasper rode ahead after that, saying nothing. The silence clung thick all the way home. That night, Cora didn't go to her room. She went to the barn. The storm lantern was lit, low and golden. Ellis was brushing down the Mustang, the air thick with the scent of sweat and old straw. "She's coming along," Cora said. "She's close to ready," Ellis replied, not turning. "I think I am too." He set down the brush. When he faced her, his eyes held all the things he never said, never dared. "Then say it." She stepped closer. The horses shifted behind her, restless, as if they felt the change in the air. "I don't want to marry him." Ellis nodded. "I know. I don't want this life, not like this." "You don't have to take it." "I don't know what else there is." He took a breath. "There's the road, there's the horse under you. There's mornings with no one deciding your name for you. There's land farther west, places nobody owns yet. You'd have your say every damn day." "You'd go with me." "I'd follow you," he said, plain as the boards under their feet. She pressed her hand to her chest, where the locket and the note lay like twin anchors. "I'm scared." "I know," he said again, "but fear's just the wind at your back if you turn toward it." Something in her cracked, then reformed. She kissed him once soft, not desperate like a decision. In the house, Jasper paced. The wedding was 12 days out. The Crane money was already seeded into the McKinley accounts. He would not be humiliated by a woman who dared to ride bareback and answer slow. He called in favors, made quiet threats. Cora didn't know yet, but the freedom she sought was already lighting fires in the dark. The Mustang was saddled at dawn, and Ellis Ward had packed more than just tack. They weren't running. They were choosing. But no one leaves a man like Jasper Crane without blood in the dust. They rode out under the thin blush of morning, where the sun cracked the horizon like an egg against the rim of the world. The air was sharp with frost and the hush of things beginning. Cora rode the Mustang unnamed still, but hers now heart to heart. Ellis rode close, not in front, not behind, just beside. No words passed between them. None needed to. Every hoofbeat was a vow, every breath a reckoning. They took the high trail west, where the timber thinned and the sky opened like a blessing. Pastures gave way to scrubland, then to the slow rise of foothills still dusted with old snow. They camped where they could, under cedars, in dry arroyos, and cooked beans over a shared fire. Cora learned the quiet of Ellis's laughter, low and rare. He learned she sang softly when she thought no one heard. At night he made her a bed from pine boughs and saddle blankets. Never crossed a line. She watched him once as he turned away from the firelight, shoulders stooped, like he carried not just a pack but a long ache he'd never named. She knew then he was a man who'd lost something, maybe someone, and never spoken it aloud. That kind of sorrow makes you careful with joy. On the fourth night she asked, "Who did you leave behind?" He looked at the stars a long time before answering. "A brother. He died in a war we both knew better than to fight." She waited. He was the loud one, took up space. I was the shadow. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. After he died, I stopped being afraid, but I never stopped missing the noise. Cora reached across the fire and touched his wrist, just that, and he let her. By the sixth day, they reached a small settlement near the Sweetwater River. Not much more than a post office, a smithy, and a chapel crooked against the wind. Cora bought bread and coffee from an old widow who gave her a look sharp with recognition. "You're McKinley's girl," the woman said, "the one promised to that southern boy." Cora's mouth went dry. "Not anymore." The woman nodded, not unkindly. "There'll be riders soon, you know that." "I know." But she didn't tell Ellis, not then. Not when he found a job offer posted at the smithy, a ranch looking for horsemen out near Fort Bridger, promising board and pay through summer. He looked at her with that quiet ask, could this be enough? "Yes," she said, "if it's with you." They stayed 2 nights, then rode on. And then the riders came. It was on the flat stretch of prairie 3 days from Bridger, where the sky was so wide it could swallow a woman whole. Cora felt the tremor through the ground first. Then she saw them, 2 men. One was a Crane ranch foreman, the other a cousin of Jasper, all fine boots and menace. They didn't draw right away, just blocked the trail. "You know why we're here," the foreman said. Cora didn't flinch. "To take me back." He nodded. "Your daddy says he'll forgive it if you come quiet." She looked at Ellis, who hadn't moved. His hand rested near the saddle horn, but not on the gun. "You can tell him no," she said, voice steady. The cousin laughed. "You're promised. That still means something." "I was promised," she said, "but I never promised back." The foreman's face darkened. "You think this man's gonna keep you?" Some dirt hand with a bedroll and a whisper. "I don't think," she said. "I know." And then Ellis spoke. "If you take her, you'll have to go through me." The moment held, taut as a drawn string. The foreman shifted. "Not worth the blood, not today." "You're making a mistake," he said. "I've made plenty," Cora said. "This ain't one." They turned, rode off, dust in their wake like smoke from a dying fire. That night Cora and Ellis didn't make camp. They rode till the moon dipped low and the cold bit hard. Finally, they stopped beneath a stand of junipers. She turned to him, her face pale with fatigue but lit from within. "I was afraid you wouldn't speak," she said. "I was afraid if I did, you'd be taken." She touched his chest. "You saying my name was the first true thing I ever heard." And then she kissed him again. This time he kissed her back. They reached Fort Bridger in the gray hush before dawn, where the scent of wet horses and wood smoke hung heavy and the mountains loomed like sentinels. The ranch was a day's ride beyond, a sprawling spread with open land enough to lose a past in. Cora rode in beside Ellis, her spine straight, her eyes wary but unbowed. Folks watched. A woman arriving with a man not her husband, wearing trousers, no ring and wind-tangled hair, earned whispers, but no one spoke them aloud. The rancher, a woman named Maeve Shaw, didn't blink when Cora stepped off the Mustang and offered her hand. "I can read brands, mend tack, and ride anything you've got that ain't got manners." Maeve looked her over once, saw the truth in her and said, "You're hired." They stayed, days folded into weeks. Spring came, slow and soft, warming the grass and teasing color from the hills. Cora slept in the bunkhouse at first. Among the other hands, her cot always made tight, her boots lined straight beneath. Ellis took the far corner closest to the stove. At night, when the others were snoring, they'd sit outside under the stars. Say little, just breathe the same air. She began to laugh again, not often, not loud. But when she did, it felt like something blooming. He started humming as he worked, low tunes without words. She braided her hair in the mornings now. He found himself watching the way her fingers moved. Once she asked him what he wanted, not what he needed to survive, but what he truly wanted. He thought on it a long time, then said, to build something that lasts, not big, just real. Cora nodded, me too. Jasper never came. There were rumors that the Crane family turned their fury inward after the embarrassment, that Jasper took a bride from Cheyenne, one who smiled more and said less. No one came looking again. Maybe her father had finally seen the iron in her spine, or maybe he'd just run out of ways to force the world to his liking. By the time summer rolled across the basin, green and golden, Cora and Ellis had carved out something between them. It wasn't lightning. It was fire, slow, steady, warming from the inside. They still hadn't spoken of love, but in the way she poured his coffee first, or how he stitched her glove when it tore, it lived. On the longest day of the year, they rode out before dawn, just the two of them, following a trail that wound through lupin and Indian paintbrush. At a high bluff, they dismounted, watched the sun rise without speaking. Then Ellis reached into his coat, pulled out a piece of worn hide, unwrapped it. Inside was a simple silver ring. "I ain't asking out of debt," he said, "and I ain't offering a cage, just a place beside me, every day if you want it." Cora stared at the ring a long time, then at him. "I want to name the Mustang first," she said. He smiled, the kind that broke something open. "And I want to wear trousers to whatever passes for a ceremony." "I'd be worried if you didn't." She took the ring, slid it on. It wasn't a claim. It was a choice. They were married that fall, under a cottonwood turned to gold, with Maeve as witness and 2 horses tied nearby. No music, no lace, just vows spoken in voices rough from work and wind. The Mustang, now named Sparrow, nickered softly as the sun slid low. And somewhere in the hush between heartbeats, the past laid itself down, not gone, just quiet. They built a home on the South Ridge. Small, sure, room enough for more if they ever wanted, but mostly for now it was just the two of them, moving through the days with purpose and care. She was never promised to him. She chose him. And that made all the difference.